All right, let's dive in. Today we are talking about a pretty serious issue that, believe it or not, started in the world of mathematics, but is now sending ripples across the entire scientific community. We're talking about the fight against fraudulent publishing.
So let's start with the event that basically set off a massive alarm. Just imagine this for a second. An entire field of science, mathematics, the foundation for so much of our world, gets kicked off a major list of top researchers. It was a huge, unprecedented move, and it made everyone ask one big question.
Right? How could things possibly get so bad that a step this drastic was even on the table? Well, to figure that out, we have to go back to the source, because this really isn't just about math, it's about the trust we place in science itself.
This whole situation has really exposed a major crack in the system, a crack in how we're supposed to validate and trust scientific work. What started as a kind of niche problem has now spread to even the most respected institutions, and it's just something we can't ignore anymore. So let's try to understand the system that even allowed something like this to happen in the first place.
The root of the problem, funny enough, actually starts with a good intention that just went way off the rails. This desire to measure scientific quality. But this push to rank everything with simple numbers has created this intense publish or perish culture.
You can think of bibliometrics as kind of like a scientist's personal stats page, like in sports. How many papers have you published? How many times have you been cited? The issue is, in a field like math where citation counts are naturally a bit lower, these stats are super easy to game. And when your career, your funding, everything depends on these numbers, well, the temptation to cheat becomes huge. And this pressure to get good stats has, of course, created a whole market for bad actors. And there are two main players that have popped up.
So first up, you've got these predatory journals. These are basically fake science magazines that look legit. They'll happily take your money to publish a paper, but they skip the single most important part, the peer review process. They're not in the business of science. They're in the business of selling publication slots.
And then you have citation cartels. This is where it gets really sneaky. It's basically groups of researchers or entire journals that make secret pacts to cite each other's work, over and over and over. It's a totally coordinated scheme to rig the system and make their research look way more important than it actually is. So here's the crucial question. Why should a niche problem in mathematics matter to the rest of us?
Because the consequences are massive, and they spill out way beyond academia. This is not just about researchers getting an unfair leg up. This has real, tangible costs for all of us.
I mean, when junk science gets published in something that looks like a real journal, how is the public, or journalists, or even policymakers supposed to tell the difference? This flood of bad information just erodes public trust and gives fuel to those anti-science movements that we're all worried about.
And think about the money. Every single dollar of taxpayer money or private funding that goes toward a grant based on these fake metrics is a dollar that's basically stolen from legitimate, high-quality research that could be solving actual problems. The waste is just immense.
And hey, if you're a student or a researcher who's trying to do honest work, how can you possibly compete? Your careful, methodical study just can't compete, numbers-wise, with someone who's part of a cartel that can generate hundreds of fake citations. The whole system gets rigged. So yeah, this is not a fringe thing anymore, and that's exactly why the big international bodies have come together with a plan of attack.
Now, the good news is the scientific community is fighting back. The International Mathematical Union and the International Council for Industrial and Applied Mathematics have laid out this really clear multi-level plan to take back control.
It has to start at the top. The policymakers and the agencies that hand out the money, they need to start relying on these simple, gameable numbers. The solution? Go back to expert-led assessments, having actual scientists read and evaluate the work, and actively push back against those simplistic university rankings that just feed this numbers game.
Universities and research institutions are the next critical line of defense. I mean, they could change the incentives almost overnight. How? By focusing on the quality of a researcher's best work, not just the sheer number of papers. They can educate their staff and students and just rethink old requirements, like needing to publish X number of articles to get a PhD. That alone could shift the whole culture. But real change isn't just a top-down thing. It also has to build from the ground up, and that brings us to the most important part, the role that each one of us has to play in this.
Because, this problem can't just be solved by policymakers. Every single person in the scientific community has a part to play in protecting its integrity.
The core advice here is pretty simple, actually. We need to get back to reading the actual work, not just glancing at the metrics. We can teach the people around us, and when we're writing our own papers, we can just cite what's truly relevant. The biggest change is just to be more critical. If something looks a little bit off, it's on us to check it out. And we really need to be on our toes, because beyond these good habits, there's a serious warning about the new tricks being used to fool even the sharpest researchers out there.
These bad actors are getting way more sophisticated. You might get an email that looks like a totally legit invitation to review a paper or join an editorial board. But its real purpose is to trick you into lending your good name and your credibility to their fake operation. It's basically scientific phishing.
And then there's an even sneakier tactic: journal hijacking. Scammers will literally create a perfect copy of a real respected journal's website. You might think you're submitting your hard work to a big-name publication, but you're actually sending it and your money to a total fraud. So, all of these problems and all these solutions, they all point to a much-needed culture change in science. And it leaves us with one final, really important question to think about.
And that's really what it all boils down to, isn't it? In our frantic attempt to quantify and rank every single piece of scientific work, we might have lost sight of what science is supposed to be about in the first place: curiosity, rigor, and the honest search for knowledge. This fight against fraudulent publishing, it's really a fight for the soul of science, for its integrity, its reliability, and its power to help us truly understand our world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you found it valuable.